Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. This video is actually part of a YouTube video hop. So there should have been a video before mine and a video after mine. Honeybee is generously giving away two $50 gift cards among the comments on the hop, so please make sure you are leaving some love as you're hopping along. Today I am going to be using the Seashells, the pierced wave, why can't I think? The pierced wave cover plate, the layering wave stencils, and then the dies for the seashells as well. Here I've just drawn myself a little bit of a wave on my regular Nina Solar White cardstock, and then I have cut that in half. I'm going to be honest with you, you guys know if you watch my channel, I don't make my cards first, so you're seeing it for the first time. I don't necessarily know that this step is necessary. You might be able to do this with just the masking and still get the same effect, but I was worried that I would have this weird line from the embossing pad, so that's why I chose to do it this way. I'm going to be doing some ink blending, but before I do that, I need to run this cover plate over just the top portion of it, so that I can have my waves all set up. I am using a combination of the cover plate and the stencils, because it's going to give it a lot more texture, but you don't necessarily need to do that. You could do one or the other and it would probably be fine. But you know me, I like to mix things up. So speaking of mix things up, the color palette that I chose is a little bit different. It's like a teal into a dark blue, which I just thought was really pretty and would be something that was different from my regular blue combination. And I'm happy that I tried it. Since distress inks work really well to blend with each other, you can set kind of the tone for your whole piece by what your base color is, and so I chose to do my base cover as a salvaged patina, and I think it's really pretty. I think it's just a really pretty color. I've been using it a lot lately, so I am going to speed this up since this is just my base layer and this doesn't include any of the stencils. This is just to give me a good something to work off of for my stenciling. I always do all my distress inking twice, feel like it gives me the best blend. So I am going to go over this one time and from my lightest to my darkest, and then back again from my darkest to my lightest. If you want there to be a bigger contrast between your stenciling and your ink blending, then I probably wouldn't go over it twice the first time. I would probably just do it once and then do one stencil and then the other, or just one stencil, to be honest, because again, I'm doing this for the first time while you guys, while I'm videoing it. I never make the same card twice typically. So here, this is my base layer. We're going to get into the stenciling. I chose to do the base first, and I think this was a mistake on my part. Just being honest, because nobody is perfect and everybody makes mistakes, whether it's in life or card making or whatever it is that you're trying to do. And I did the base layer first, and I feel like either you could do one of the stencils, or if you do two of the stencils, start with the top first. Because basically the second amount of stenciling that I did was completely pointless. But anyway, I'm just working in the same order that I was before, putting them all over their consecutive base layer colors. So the chip sapphire over the chip sapphire, the blueprint sketch over the blueprint sketch, so on and so forth. And this is just going to give me a lot of really good variation in the background and make our waves just a little bit more interesting to look at. And I was really happy with the way that this came out. It had texture from that cover plate. It had good color variation from the stenciling. I'm not mad at it at all. I think it was super pretty. And blue is my boyfriend. You know that I love blue and that it makes me happy. Especially when you get the blues into the teals. Those are so pretty. So yeah, I came up with this idea to try this actually while I was laying in bed one night trying to fall asleep. Since I am doing this gig full time now, this card making gig, I frequently think about what I have in my calendar and what I need to work on. And so the whole Perfect Day release has so much, like so many beach themed things, and they're all super pretty. And I was like trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And, I was like, I really like to use the waves, but then I'd really like to use the flowers. And so I did, lay there. I'm not going to lie. I do lay there and kind of like think about my day or think about what I'm going to have to work on after I say my prayers and I'm trying to fall asleep. And so I remembered that I had this embossing powder, and that really is what prompted the whole card right there. So now that the stenciling and the waves portion is done, I'm going to work on the sand portion. I'm being realistic, Monday morning quarterbacking, hindsight 2020, however you want to put it. I probably didn't even need all these colors because a lot of it is covered up by the surf. I probably could have got away with maybe just 2 of the colors, this brushed corduroy and maybe the vintage photo. But just in case you don't have this embossing powder and you still want to create a similar card, you could use my old go-to technique. I shouldn't even say old. My previous go-to technique for creating surf. I have lots of videos on that. That would also work for this. To put the texture into the sand, I am going to use the Sandy Shores background stamp. You guys just saw this the other day when I did my fruit card last week. So I'm actually using it for what it's intended for this time. I am just stamping in Distress ink, which, full disclosure, does not stamp well. It's just not great, but I don't really care because I'm not using it to get a perfect image. I'm using it simply to create this look of sandy texture on my beach. So I'm going to flip that over and put it on top of my stamp. I'm going to use just a buffer piece of paper so that it's not messy. Hold it with one hand, smooth it with the other, and then switch. You'll be able to see those little sandy look there. This is how they fit into each other. And then here is one of the big things. Make sure that you heat set this. You have to, because I did this for probably a good, 2 to 3 minutes. And then this is just clear just so I can check and see if it's dry. And you can see that it's not. Even though I dried it for, like I said, a good 2 to 3 minutes, because you're talking about such a heavy ink application, with the Distress inks, and it does stay wet for longer, you have to make sure that it is dry before you do this. So this is where the magic happens. This is where we create that super fun surf. So the reason that I cut them into 2 pieces is so that I could use my Versamark pad to ink up the edges. And I'm just using the corner of it to add it, maybe about, a quarter of an inch in. And this is going to allow me to put embossing powder on it and have it stick. I am going to go ahead and glue this down first because I wanted it to be connected as if it was one piece, the surf. But I needed them to be 2 separate pieces simply so that I could ink the edges. I don't know if that's necessary. In hindsight, and after having made the card, you could probably hold your Versamark pad at an angle where you're able to get it just where the 2 pieces of paper meet, or where your 2 borders would meet. But that's not what I did. I cut them apart because I wanted to be able to ink the edges. So once that's down there, I am going to go back in with that Versamark pad and very quickly just tap over where they're meeting. And then this is the magic stuff, okay? This is where it's at. This is the Wow Puff Twinkle Embossing Powder. It has the glitters in it, which you know I love. If you don't like the glitters, they have just a puff white without the twinkle. But basically what this does is it's an embossing powder, but when you apply heat to it, it puffs up and becomes very textured. And I originally bought it for snow. That's why I own it. But I got to thinking while I was laying in bed that I could use it for surf as well. And it worked beautifully. Now, full disclosure, I'm totally about to mess this entire card up. and then we'll fix it. But you can see here, you can still see that line a little bit, and I didn't love it. So I try to go back to my default method of fixing the like the white. So what I'm doing here is I'm tapping on white acrylic paint with some water. This is not going to work. It doesn't work, and it actually ends up, because that embossing powder is not solid, it actually ends up wetting the Distress ink and pulling up that color. You'll be able to see here in a minute. Why am I showing you this? Because again, I'm not perfect. I don't want you to think, I'm going to wipe this up, I'm just going to blot it up with a baby wipe, and then I am going to fix it. But I don't want you to think for one hot second that anybody, even the people who are doing it for a living, are making picture perfect cards every time, because we're not. Comparison is the thief of joy. Your card is pretty, my card is pretty. They are pretty for different reasons. Don't pigeonhole yourself or overwhelm yourself into thinking that you can't make cards, or that your cards don't have as much worth or as much value because they look different than mine. We're at two different places on our artistic journey. Let's go back to this card for a second. So here, I did just go back in. I had to wait for it to dry, full disclosure, because once I added the moisture, it really pulled apart that seam. And so I did have to wait for it to dry. I went back in with the Versamark, and then I put on more embossing powder on top of it. I also went in with my finger and kind of pushed the embossing powder into the seam, and that did seem to solve my problem. Seam. SEEM. You get what I'm saying. I pushed it into the seam. It fixed the problem. But anyway, it did make it a little bit thicker, but I'm not mad at it. I think it does look pretty cool. Like a little ocean surf, like sweeping these seashells onto our final card. So yeah, 5 stars. I would recommend. Give it a try. It's super cool. And you don't even have to, like the seashells, obviously I did it because I love to color, and I think these seashells are so well done. There's 9 shells in the set, and they're all like beautiful and unique, and I can't wait to color the rest of them. But you could definitely do this, with something else that would be, just this beach scene, maybe just a sentiment. I think it's cool enough to carry a whole card. So anyway, back to my TED Talk. I am stamping these in Copic Safe ink, and then I am going to color them with Copic markers. Something to note, somebody had asked me recently, and I addressed it in another video, about the ink smearing, and I told you guys it's because I either stamp it twice and don't wait for it to dry, or my marker is dry and I'm kind of scrubbing it and it's smearing the ink. So here you can see I'm about to use some really, really light markers, but because I took the time to make sure that it was dry, they aren't going to smear at all. So it really is my error in not being patient and waiting, and not the ink that I'm using. So yeah, we're in two different places in our art journey, and that is okay. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't still be making your art, or that I shouldn't be still be making our art. We're all learning, we're all practicing, we're all just out here living our stressful lives, trying to survive it, y'all. And for me, creating is a stress reliever. It is a way to kind of get myself lost in thought and let go of my stress and my worries. And I hope that it does the same thing for you, that it makes your heart happy. But if you're busy comparing your card making to other people, or whatever art you do, maybe you're a person who just comes for story time and you don't necessarily come, for the card making, which is cool. Everybody's welcome here. You can sit at my table. But just don't think that you're less than because we're in two different places. That's all I'm saying. Don't compare yourself to other people. It's not about that. It's about your own personal growth and the enjoyment that you get out of creating. So let's talk about this Copic coloring right quick. I love these seashells. I just told you I thought that they were incredibly well done, and I stand by that. I think that they're beautiful images. I could not wait to color them. They're all very generously sized. And so we've talked about it before with Copa coloring. I like to go from lightest to darkest, darkest to lightest. I feel like this gives me the best blend. Getting dimension with lighter colors can be very tricky because you don't want to get too heavy-handed, but you have to use some dark colors in order to get the shadows. Where 2 points meet, you'll have shadows, and where one lays on top of the other, you will have shadows. The way that this particular shell is drawn, it's drawn so that there are peaks and there are valleys. Whichever one you choose, okay? Whichever, point of the shell you choose to be a peak or you choose to be a valley, just commit to it. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same as mine, but alternating them is a good idea so that you have a valley and then a peak, a valley and then a peak, and you have to use a little bit of a dark color. Now, in this case, my dark color is this EO4. I think it's actually called lipstick. Is that what it's called? Lipstick Natural. And you probably wouldn't think that that would be a color, but this color that I am coloring this particular shell is actually the color combination that I use for Caucasian skin when I am coloring people. It's just a good peachy kind of color, which I thought would play really nicely for the shells. And this EO4, even though we're not using a lot of it, I mean, you can see we're just using lines of it, even on the sides here. All I'm going to do is one line down one side and one line down the other side. That's going to be enough with the highlight of that E50 that it will be enough to give it a lot of dimension and a lot of shape. So don't be so worried about it looks really complex. Just remember those principles where two things meet, shadows, where one lays on top of the other, shadows. And in the case of a ruffle or a, folds, or in this case, this ripple of the shell, it's alternating. Valley, peak, valley, peak. So that way you have a light, a highlight, and then a really dark shadow. And that's going to give you a ton of good dimension so that you'll be more happy with your coloring. So this one is just about done. The next one that I'm going to do here for the E50, I used this. This is the only color I put on the edges because, again, I want them to be very highlighted. This one in the top right corner, I'm going to use some warm grays for. And again, just sticking with really neutral colors for these shells. And I am going to repeat that kind of peachy pink color just because I want them to be cohesive. Even though they're all different color grays or all, one of them is peach and some of them have those peach tones in them. I want them to look nice together on the card. So I'm just trying to repeat the same colors that I've already used, just a little bit differently. So for this particular one, I'm doing it with a round highlight because that's the way that that shell is drawn. So I am bringing in a flicking motion from the top and the bottom. And this is going to give me a highlight right around those round edges, which is going to give us a ton of dimension. And then for my darkest color, I'm really, again, only going to do a line where it will be the darkest. Now, originally, I thought the W5 would be my darkest color, but I'm actually going to end up with a W7. And this is just going to be where this little inlet is for this shell down at the bottom there, and then right around where they lie, the layers lie on top of each other, and you'll see, because I'm going to get the marker right here. Didn't even know I needed it until I know I needed it. So there where one lays on top of the other, and you can see it's just a line, but it makes so much difference, you guys. It makes so much difference in the dimension, and it's just literally one line of color, and then I'm going to go back in and blend it out with my others. And the highlight on this one, there is still some true white of the paper in there. I didn't completely cover it. So yeah, I mean, my friend Catherine had posted recently on Facebook talking about, um, I can't remember the name of what it's called, but it's the Japanese art of the way that they fix their things is when like a bowl breaks, they put it back together and they seal it with gold, um, because it makes it more beautiful. And so a lot of times, when you think that you're broken, those things are just making you more beautiful. And I just really feel like people are walking around thinking that, they're overwhelmed to try because it's not good enough, or they're going to make a mistake or make an error, or it's not going to look as good as fill in the blank, whoever's. And, that's just so not true. And I know we've had this conversation before, but every once in a while I feel the need to remind you that you are good enough. Just the way you are. At the level you are, at what you're creating, you are good enough. And if nobody has told you that, then let me be the first. You are good enough. And you'll keep learning and you'll keep practicing and your style will change and the things that you're interested in will change. And that's good. We're supposed to do that. We're supposed to grow and change and, have new things that bring us joy. And like, if you had told me 10 years ago that I would be able to explain to somebody why my Coba coloring looked like this and why I did it that way, I would have told you were out of your mind. But here we are, doing it, living our best life. So for this little seashell, the shading here, real simple. These ones are so great for practicing because it's just lines of color. That's it. You don't even have to take them all the way to the edge. You're going to just do a line of color and then you're going to slightly overlap them and do another line. I do try to leave a little bit of a white edge so that my white is the highlight. You could definitely leave it like this as if it was colored white. I know it looks gray. When you put it on the background, it'll look white, I promise. But again, I wanted to bring in those peachy pink colors for that cohesive look. This is another thing you can do. If at the end of your coloring you don't think you have enough dimension, just go back in with your darker color and just put that line back in, because your lighter colors will soften your darker colors. So here I kind of chose, this is actually I think called Peach. Yeah, it is. This R32 is called Peach. And I'm just going to do it up from the center. And then I'm going to use 2 of those same E markers that I've used in the first shell. Why can't I think of the word shell? Crazy. The first shell to kind of blend that out and blend this up a little. Just like I said. It's redundant at this point. So they all look like they're matchy-matchy. That's the point. So once those are done, I outline my images. This is totally unnecessary and just part of my own quirkiness. You do not have to do this. I just like a bold black outline. It makes me happy. Yes, I could overstamp them in the Misty. I had a bad experience once, and so I choose not to do that. And the outlining is therapeutic for me. I enjoy it. Once that's done, I'm going to go ahead and die cut these guys out. And then I'm going to work on the sentiment. The sentiment is from the Seashells set. And the one I chose said, "May your day be filled with wow, Kelly. Sunshine and seashells." Say that 3 times fast. Do it. Make yourself laugh. And so I'm going to do this on white in white embossing powder because I'm going to ink blend this to match my waves background. I didn't feel like I would get a good impression on the waves background because it is textured, so that is why I chose to do it this way, and then just cut it out with its coordinating die. This white embossing powder I'm using is also wow, but it's just the regular opaque bright white. No no puffy or glittery attributes to this one. So I'm doing basically the same thing that I did for the base, even though the salty ocean is going to be way too light. It is going to give me the base color that I need, that the inks on my card share. So here you can see it's way too light, but we're going to keep adding color. Now that I have a good idea of where it's going to go, I can just add that in there so that it will be able to blend in. And honestly, I think we did a pretty okay job getting it to make friends. I did double check it just one more time before I was done committing to it, just to make sure that it was going to be good and solid. And you'll see that here in just 1 second before we start putting our card together. So it's all good, it blends in. And then for the building of the card, I chose to glue this larger shell down in the back just flat. I didn't have any issues with it adhering to either the texture and the waves or the embossing powder. It stuck really well to both of them. And then once I had that in place, I wanted to pop up the other two shells, but I didn't want to have to do like 3 layers of foam. So what I did was I popped up this first seashell on the regular level of foam tape. And then the other one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do like a partial foam tape so that they're flush together. I mean, obviously it'll be a little bit higher because it's another layer of cardstock, but not like 2 layers of foam tape higher, so you can't even get it in an envelope. So I laid it down, I figured out where the foam needed to be to make it flush. That's what you see here. And then I'm just going to glue the other portion of it to the seashell and put that down. For the sentiment, I also chose to pop that up on foam tape. Again, that one would probably be fine glued down flat, but I just thought that it would be nice to have something else that was a little popped up along with my shells. And then the last thing I did, because you know I love the glitters, I'm an addict, I can admit that. I went in with a clear shimmer pen and added that to all of my seashells. And then that's it. That's the whole card. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope that you are enjoying the hop and that you leave comments so that you have a chance to win. I appreciate your time and I will catch you guys on the next video. Bye.